I woke up to the smell of antiseptic, sharp, sterile, and cold. The ceiling above me was a dull off-white, the kind you only see in hospitals and places that don't expect visitors. My throat felt dry, my tongue thick. When I turned my head, I saw metal bars on the window and a tray table with a half-melted cup of Jell-O. The name on the wristband caught my eye, Robert J. Carter, my name, printed in block letters beside a barcode. I lifted my hand, the plastic biting against my skin. A nurse in scrubs walked in, holding a clipboard. She smiled, that polite, empty kind of smile people give when they're being paid to care. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. How are we feeling today? Where am I?" My voice came out rasped and unfamiliar. "You're at Silver Pines Assisted Living," she said. "You've been admitted for long-term care." Admitted? I tried to sit up, but my legs felt weak, like they belonged to someone else. "I didn't sign anything." She hesitated, eyes flicking down at her chart. "Your son-in-law signed the papers. You're under guardianship now. Everything's been arranged." Guardianship. That word hit harder than a punch. I knew what it meant. I'd spent decades drafting the documents that allowed one person to take control of another's affairs. I was a lawyer for 35 years. I'd represented families in trust disputes, inheritance battles, messy guardianship cases. I'd warned clients to be careful about who they gave power of attorney to. And now I was the fool who didn't see it coming. "Call my daughter," I said. "Tell her I'm here." "She knows," the nurse said softly, as if that would calm me. She approved everything. I didn't believe her. Laura would never do that. Not the same girl who used to sit in my office as a child, swinging her legs under my desk while I worked. Not the daughter who cried when her mother died 5 years ago and said, "Dad, we'll take care of each other now." Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. The nurse left, and I was alone with the hum of fluorescent lights. I turned to the nightstand, just a plastic cup, a remote control, and a Bible. No phone. No wallet. No keys. The door was locked from the outside. That's when I noticed the papers folded neatly beside my bed. Legal documents, I recognized the layout instantly. The header read, "Power of Attorney, Durable Guardianship." At the bottom, there was my name. My supposed signature. Only, it wasn't mine. The curve of the R was too loose. The Carter ended with a flourish I never used. Someone had forged it. And there was only one person who stood to gain anything from it, my son-in-law, Derek. I sat back on the bed, the pulse pounding behind my eyes. The air felt heavy, almost electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. They thought I was too old to fight back. They thought the law had forgotten me. But I wasn't done yet. No, not by a long shot. Tell me where you're watching from, and hit like if you've ever realized too late that the people you trusted most were the ones writing you out of your own life. Before all this, before the bars, before the papers, before the betrayal, I had what most men my age would call a good life. I'd practiced law for nearly 4 decades in Richmond, Virginia. My firm wasn't big, but it was honest. We handled estates, family trusts, and small business contracts. I knew every client by name, and I never once took a shortcut I couldn't defend in front of a judge. When my wife, Margaret, was alive, the house we built together stood like a promise. White shutters, wraparound porch, a maple tree out front that turned the color of fire each October. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. After she died, the house grew quiet. The kind of quiet that hums in the walls. Laura, my daughter, visited often in those first years. She'd bring my grandson, Charlie, a boy with his mother's soft eyes and my stubborn chin. He'd run up the porch steps yelling, "Grandpa, let's go see the frogs," and I'd drop whatever I was doing to take him to the pond out back. That little boy kept me going. Then Laura married Derek. At first, I wanted to like him. He was charming, in that polished, practiced way some men learn from expensive schools and cheap ambition. Worked in real estate. Always closing deals. Always talking about opportunity. When he shook my hand for the first time, his grip was firm, but his eyes were already looking past me. I should have trusted my gut. Over time, Derek's visits became less about family and more about finances. "You've done well, sir," he'd say over dinner, his smile too tight. "A man like you ought to enjoy retirement. Sell the place, move into something simpler. No shame in resting after all those years of work." I just nod and change the subject. But the comments kept coming, each one a little sharper than the last. After Margaret passed, I set up a trust, nothing extravagant, just enough to ensure Laura and Charlie would be secure when I was gone. Derek knew about it. Too much about it. He'd ask questions he had no business asking. "How's the trust structured, Bob? Who manages it? What if you're, not in the best state of mind someday?" He'd laugh after saying things like that, as if they were jokes. But I'd been a lawyer too long not to recognize the shape of intent. Then came the small losses, the slow bleeding of independence that old age brings. My hip started bothering me. Driving at night got harder. The mail piled up faster than I opened it. Laura offered to help with bills, which was kind, and Derek offered to streamline my finances. He said he could consolidate my accounts and handle online payments just to make life easier. I said no. Repeatedly. But I didn't realize that no wasn't enough for a man like him. The first real crack came the day I noticed my pension payment hadn't arrived. I called the bank, thinking it was a clerical mistake. The voice on the other end said my account had been frozen due to legal guardianship status. I laughed, thinking I'd misheard. Guardianship? I was still managing my firm's taxes, for God's sake. I tried calling Laura. No answer. Then I tried Derek. He picked up on the second ring. "Bob, it's fine," he said smoothly. "We had to take some precautionary steps. You've been a little forgetful lately, haven't you? This is for your own protection." I remember gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. "For my protection?" I said. "You froze my accounts." "Temporarily," he replied. "You'll thank me later." A week later, he showed up at my door with Laura. She looked nervous, like a child about to confess something she didn't do. Derek smiled, all warmth and false concern. "Bob," he said, "why don't we take you in for a quick checkup? You've seemed a little tired lately." I should have refused. But Laura touched my arm and said softly, "Just for me, Dad. Please." That was the last time I saw my house from the outside. I remember the drive, how Derek talked the entire way, filling the silence with plans about long-term arrangements. I remember the moment the car turned off the highway, past the sign for Silver Pines Assisted Living. And I remember the exact tone of his voice when he said, "You'll be comfortable here for a while." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. But now, sitting in that locked room with my stolen signature on the table beside me, I finally did. I hadn't just lost my money. I'd lost the trust of the only family I had left. And for a man like me, a man who built his life on loyalty and words that meant something, that was the real theft. The day it all broke open started like any other at Silver Pines. Breakfast at 7:30. Pills at 8 o'clock. Group stretching at 9 o'clock, which was really just a room full of old folks pretending to care. I went through the motions, silent, watching the sunlight crawl across the linoleum. But my mind was already elsewhere. I'd been waiting for my pension deposit. The 15th of the month, I never missed that date. It had been my habit for 40 years, even in retirement. So, after breakfast, I asked to use the phone. Just to call the bank, I told the nurse. She hesitated, then pointed me to the communal phone at the end of the hall. The receiver was sticky, the cord coiled tight like a snake. I dialed the number from memory. After a few transfers, a young man's voice came on. "Yes, Mr. Carter, I see the account here. But I'm afraid there's been a change. Your pension is being redirected." "Redirected where?" "To your authorized guardian's account." I felt my stomach drop. Guardian? Who the hell? "It says here, Derek Williams. Signed and approved 2 months ago." I hung up before the kid could finish. My hands were shaking, not from age, but from fury. 2 months ago, that was before the so-called checkup. He'd been planning this. They hadn't brought me here for care. They'd brought me here to disappear. That afternoon, a woman from administration came to see me. She was all smiles and perfume, carrying a clipboard thick with forms. "Mr. Carter," she said in that patronizing tone reserved for children and the elderly, "we're just reviewing your residency agreement. Everything looks good. You're all set here for the next year." "I didn't agree to any of this," I said. She tilted her head. "Your family did. We have the paperwork." I reached for the documents. She hesitated but handed them over, maybe assuming I couldn't read them anymore. Mistake. I flipped through the pages: guardianship authorization, medical consent, financial management, all with my name scrawled at the bottom. My signature. Or rather, what someone thought was my signature. The same sloppy flourish. The same forged R. I looked up at her, my pulse hammering. "This is a crime," I said quietly. "And you're part of it if you don't report it." Her smile faltered. "Sir, please." "I was an attorney for 35 years, I interrupted. "And I know exactly what I'm looking at." She backed away, muttering something about getting the supervisor. But I didn't care. My eyes were still fixed on the crooked handwriting at the bottom of the page. That was the moment it sank in, the totality of it. Derek hadn't just stolen my money. He'd stolen my name, my choices, my identity. For a man who built his life around contracts and trust, it was like being erased from my own story. When the nurse came back later with my dinner, I didn't touch it. I sat in the dark, the forged signature glowing in my mind like a brand. They thought I'd fade quietly, like most men my age do when the world decides they're done. But I wasn't done. That night, I promised myself one thing: I would find a way out, and I'd make damn sure Derek learned that even old men can still fight. I didn't sleep that night. The hum of the fluorescent lights and the faint sound of the television from the hallway mixed with the rhythm of my thoughts, slow, deliberate, sharp. My body might have been trapped in that nursing home, but my mind was working like it used to in court, building a case, brick by brick. The next morning, during breakfast, I started watching people instead of eating. Observation was my old habit. The staff here had patterns: nurses rotated every 8 hours, the orderlies every 12, and the night guard spent more time scrolling his phone than watching the security cameras. I began to map their routines the way I once mapped witness testimonies, looking for contradictions, weak points, human cracks where truth could slip in. That's when I noticed her. A young nurse, maybe mid-30s, with tired eyes and a ponytail that was always coming loose. She wasn't like the others. When she spoke to residents, she didn't use that sing-song tone they reserve for toddlers and the dying. She called them by their names. And she called me Mr. Carter, not sweetheart or hon. Her name tag read Megan Turner. For a few days, I watched her quietly, waiting for the right moment. It came one afternoon when she found me sitting near the window, staring at the parking lot. "Beautiful day out there," she said, setting down my medication cup. "Beautiful," I replied. "Makes you wish those bars weren't in the way." She smiled, half amused, half sad. "You're sharper than most around here, Mr. Carter. Lawyer for 35 years. Old habits die hard." That got her attention. I could tell she wasn't used to hearing residents talk about courtrooms instead of bingo. She hesitated, then said quietly, "Then you must understand why some people get put here. Families say they can't manage, that it's for their safety." I met her eyes. "And how many of them are really here for their safety, Megan?" She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. That silence was the beginning of trust. Over the next few days, I told her bits of my story, nothing too much at once. How I was brought here, for a checkup. How my accounts had been frozen. How my signature had been forged. At first, she listened politely, the way a nurse humors a confused patient. But the more I spoke, the less she blinked. Finally, one afternoon, she said, "Do you have proof?" I pointed to my nightstand drawer. Inside was a folder I'd managed to keep hidden beneath a stack of crossword puzzles, copies of the forged documents I'd borrowed from administration. Megan opened it, flipping through the pages. Her brows furrowed as she saw the signatures. "Someone really did this to you," she whispered. "Someone with a lot to gain," I replied. "My son-in-law. He thinks he's untouchable. But the law has long arms, and I still remember how to use them." She closed the folder, her face tight. "If I help you, I could lose my job." "If you don't," I said softly, "a crime goes unpunished. And a good man loses his life while still breathing." That night, she slipped me a blank sheet of paper and a pen. "Write what you need to say," she whispered. "I'll make sure it gets to whoever you trust." I waited until the lights went out before I began. My hands were slow, but my words were steady. To James O'Neill, ESQ Richmond, Virginia. James. If you're reading this, it means things have gone as bad as they could. Derek forged my signature and obtained guardianship through false documents. I'm being held in Silver Pines assisted living against my will. Please contact the clerk's office for verification and initiate proceedings immediately. Tell Laura nothing yet, she's being lied to. Robert J. Carter. When Megan picked up the letter the next morning, her hands trembled. "You really think this will work?" "It's the law, Megan," I said. "It always works, once you make it see you." For the first time, she smiled like she believed me. The next few days were an exercise in patience. I had no idea if the letter reached James. I spent hours pretending to read or nap while my mind kept circling one thought: Derek thinks I'm finished. Let him think that a little longer. Then, one Thursday morning, Megan passed me a folded note with my breakfast tray. Inside, in James's familiar handwriting, it said, "Got your letter. Working on it. Sit tight. Truth's coming." I read it 3 times. My chest loosened for the first time in weeks. That night, lying in bed, I looked at the bars on the window again. They were still there, cold and heavy, but for the first time, I didn't see a prison. I saw leverage. They'd trapped a lawyer. And lawyers, as I once told my clients, always find a way out. The first rule of the law, the one they don't teach you in school, is simple: paper wins. Words fade, memories twist, but a piece of paper with the right signature can raise the dead or bury the living. Derek had used that rule to trap me. I was about to use it to bury him. After Megan smuggled out my letter, things began to move. James O'Neill, my former partner, an old bulldog of a lawyer who'd never retired in spirit, had already started digging. Within a week, he sent another note, this one tucked inside a rolled-up magazine Megan left on my tray. Confirmed forgery. Derek filed documents using outdated power of attorney and a falsified affidavit from your doctor. I've spoken with Laura. She's in shock. Sit tight, we're building a case. When I read it, my hands shook so badly the paper rustled. The bastard had even roped in my doctor, or at least forged his certification. I'd seen that play before: make the old man seem confused, then sweep the assets before anyone noticed. Megan noticed my trembling and asked quietly, "You okay?" I nodded, folding the letter into my sleeve. Better than I've been in weeks. But I wasn't content to just wait. I needed my own leverage, proof that would turn Derek's smug grin into panic. So, I asked Megan to help me get a copy of the facility's visitor log. It wasn't hard, she was trusted, and most staff didn't care what a resident requested as long as it seemed harmless. When she handed it over 2 nights later, I flipped through the pages until I found what I needed, Derek's signature, several times, under family visits. Each one was dated before the guardianship papers were supposedly signed. That meant he'd been orchestrating the setup while pretending to check in on me. I smiled for the first time in weeks. He visited to commit the crime, I murmured. Beautiful. We copied the pages by hand and sent them out with Megan's next delivery. By then, James had already contacted the county clerk and confirmed the forgery. He went further, he subpoenaed the bank records and discovered that Derek had begun transferring money out of my trust account. Quietly, systematically, siphoning off what he thought no one would ever trace. Got him dead to rights, James wrote in his next letter. Stay calm. We'll make our move soon. But even the best laid plans need a human push. That came unexpectedly from Laura. One evening, Megan came into my room, holding her phone close to her chest. Someone wants to talk to you, she whispered, glancing toward the hallway. Quickly. I took the phone and heard a voice I hadn't heard in months, shaky, full of regret. Dad? My throat tightened. Laura. They told me you didn't want visitors, she said. That you were confused, that you wanted to stay there. Oh God, Dad, I believed them. I closed my eyes, steadying my voice. None of that's true, sweetheart. He lied to you. He forged everything. I know, she said, crying. Mr. O'Neill showed me. Derek's been taking money, using your name. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, I told her. Just listen. I'm fine. But we have to be careful. He's smart, and desperate men do stupid things when they feel the ground shifting. There was silence on the line, then, we're going to stop him, Dad. I promise. That promise was all I needed. Over the next week, the trap was set. James filed a petition to revoke the guardianship, backed by evidence of fraud and financial abuse. The district court moved faster than expected once the forged doctor's note came to light. An investigator confirmed the physician's real signature didn't match the one Derek used. While the case wound its way through the system, Megan and I stayed vigilant. I played the role of a compliant old man, docile and quiet, while the storm built outside. Every day, I felt the air change, nurses whispering, administrators glancing my way, someone making extra phone calls from the front desk. Derek must have sensed something. And then, one afternoon, he showed up. I was in the courtyard, pretending to read, when his reflection appeared in the glass door behind me. Crisp suit, fake smile, the faint scent of expensive cologne, arrogance, bottled and sprayed. Bob, he said, stepping closer. How are they treating you? I didn't look up. Like a man in prison. You'd know something about that soon enough. His smile faltered, just slightly. Careful what you say, old man. You're not well. Everyone knows that. I finally met his gaze. I'm well enough to recognize a forgery when I see one. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped, his eyes went cold, flat. Then he leaned closer, whispering, "You think anyone's gonna believe you? You're an 80-year-old with a file that says you're unfit." I made sure of that. I let him talk. It's what liars do best before they fall. When he walked away, I felt strangely calm. Because what he didn't know was that James had already sent a court order to the local sheriff's office. Derek's little empire of deceit was about to collapse. That night, Megan brought me one final message. Tomorrow morning. Stay ready. The police will come. Don't argue. Just stand tall. I folded the note and placed it in my pocket, over my heart. It wasn't just about freedom anymore. It was about justice, slow, patient, deliberate justice. The kind that men like Derek never see coming until the handcuffs close. For the first time in a long while, I slept soundly. Morning came with the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the smell of oatmeal drifting down the hall. I woke before dawn, dressed in the plain gray sweater Megan had brought me from the donation bin, and sat by the window, waiting. There was a strange stillness in me, not fear, not excitement, just clarity. The kind I used to feel right before a verdict was read in court. You could sense the air tighten, as if the truth itself was holding its breath. At exactly 9:14, I heard the sound of shoes echoing down the tiled corridor, heavy, deliberate, out of rhythm with the nurse's soft steps. 2 men, maybe 3. The kind of stride that doesn't ask permission to enter. When the door opened, the first thing I saw was the badge. "Mr. Robert Carter," one of the officers said. "Yes," I answered, standing as tall as my age allowed. "I'm Detective Harris with the Richmond Police Department. We have a court order to remove you from this facility and place you under your own care, pending investigation." Megan stood behind them, pretending to busy herself with paperwork, but when our eyes met, she gave the faintest nod. "Where is Derek Williams?" the detective asked. "He's supposed to be here today," Megan said. "Came yesterday to check on financial paperwork." "Good," the detective muttered. "Saves us a trip." It didn't take long. Derek arrived 20 minutes later, walking fast, holding his phone like it was a weapon. He froze the instant he saw the police, and then me, standing beside them, not sedated or silent, but clear-eyed and waiting. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "This man is under my legal guardianship." The detective held up a folder. "Not anymore. Guardianship revoked as of this morning. You're under investigation for fraud, forgery, and financial abuse of a dependent adult. You might want to call your lawyer." The color drained from his face. "This is ridiculous. He's delusional. He's not well." "I assure you," I said evenly, "I've never been sharper." I pulled a copy of the letter James had sent me, the court's confirmation of the forgery findings, and handed it to the officer. The pages were stamped and sealed, proof against every lie Derek had ever built. He reached for his phone, but one of the detectives stepped forward. "Put it down, sir." Derek's voice rose, sharp and desperate. "Laura. Laura, you can't let them do this." And that's when she appeared. My daughter stood at the end of the hall, her eyes red but her jaw set. She looked at me first, then at him. "Derek," she said quietly, "I already did." He blinked. "What?" "I filed for divorce this morning." For the first time, Derek was speechless. He looked around like a man watching the ground crumble beneath his feet. "You don't understand, I was trying to protect your father. He's confused, he's—" "Enough," Laura said, her voice breaking. "You forged our names. You locked him away. You stole from us. The only confused person here is you." When the officer stepped forward with the cuffs, Derek didn't resist. He just stared at me, eyes burning with disbelief. "You'll regret this," he hissed as they turned him around. I smiled, faintly. "I already did. For trusting you." They led him down the hall. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was quieter than I imagined, almost gentle. After they left, the administrator of the facility came rushing in, pale and trembling. "Mr. Carter, I had no idea." "Save it," I said. "You did what everyone does when the paperwork looks official, you didn't question it. Maybe next time, you will." Megan helped me gather my few belongings, a book, a sweater, and the photo of Margaret and Laura from my nightstand. When we stepped outside, the sunlight hit me like a baptism. After weeks of artificial lights and sterile air, the sky looked impossibly blue. Laura was waiting by the car. She hugged me before I could say anything. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You didn't know," I said. "And he made sure of that." She shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "But I should have." "No," I told her gently. "You just trusted the wrong man. We all do, at least once." We drove in silence for a long time. The roads rolled by, gas stations, oak trees, telephone wires stretching toward the horizon. It felt like driving out of a dream I'd been trapped in for too long. When we finally turned onto my street, I saw my house again, the white shutters, the wraparound porch, the maple tree out front. It was just as I remembered, only quieter. Laura parked and killed the engine. "Home," I murmured. As I stepped out, I felt the weight of everything, the betrayal, the loneliness, the long nights of planning, fall away. The grass beneath my shoes was real, the air free. Laura took my arm. "Are you okay?" I looked at her, at my daughter who had finally opened her eyes to truth, and smiled. "I am now." That evening, as the sun sank behind the maple, James called. His voice was warm and steady, just like the old days. "It's over," he said. "Derek's been charged. The DA's taking it seriously. You're officially a free man." I thanked him, though words felt small compared to what he'd done. When we hung up, I sat on the porch, listening to the crickets begin their nightly song. Freedom, I realized, didn't feel like celebration. It felt like peace, quiet, earned, unshakable peace. The weeks after Derek's arrest were quiet in a way that felt almost holy. There were no more phone calls from lawyers, no knocks at the door, no talk of guardianship or medical evaluations. Just silence, and the simple, healing noise of life returning to normal. The creak of the porch swing. The distant bark of a neighbor's dog. The rhythmic tick of the old grandfather clock in the hall, steady as a heartbeat. Laura stayed with me for a while. At first, I thought it was out of guilt, but I soon realized it was something deeper. She needed to see that I was really there, that the man her husband had called confused could still fix his own coffee, still balance his own checkbook, still argue about politics over breakfast. One afternoon, she found me at my desk, sorting through a stack of old law files. "Dad, you don't have to work," she said gently. "I'm not working," I said, looking up at her. "I'm rebuilding." The box was full of letters from former clients, widows, veterans, people I'd helped protect from bad contracts and worse relatives. I'd spent my life defending others from manipulation, yet I hadn't seen it creeping into my own home. Laura sat beside me, touching the corner of one of the letters. "I still can't believe what he did," she whispered. "The things he said about you, I believed him, Dad. I thought you were slipping." I reached for her hand. "That's what men like Derek do. They build trust first, so when they lie, it sounds like concern." She nodded, tears brimming again. "I'm just glad you're here," I said. "That's all that matters." A few months later, the trial was over. Derek took a plea deal, 5 years for fraud, another 2 for elder abuse. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I declined. I'd spent enough of my life speaking in court. Some truths don't need an audience, they just need to settle quietly where they belong. Afterward, I told Laura I wanted to start something, a non-profit, small and local, to help protect seniors from exactly what happened to me. She hesitated at first, but when she saw how serious I was, she joined without hesitation. We called it Second Signature, because that's what I wished someone had required before believing Derek's lies, a second set of eyes, a moment of pause. Within months, we had a small office, a volunteer lawyer, and a phone that rang every day with stories far too familiar. One woman said her son had taken out loans in her name. Another said her niece had tricked her into signing over her house. Each call broke my heart and hardened my resolve. Laura ran the administrative side, while I handled consultations, pro bono, of course. I'd sit across from these people, look them in the eye, and say, "You're not crazy. You're not confused. You're being taken advantage of." And it stops now. It gave me purpose again. Maybe even redemption. Charlie, my grandson, came over often after school. He'd run straight to the backyard, where I'd finally repaired the old swing set. I'd sit nearby on the porch, watching him pump his legs higher, shouting, "Look, Grandpa, I can fly." Sometimes, Laura joined us, sitting quietly beside me. "He's going to remember this," she said once. "Not what happened, just that you were here." "That's all I want," I said. "The rest can fade." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years, the house felt whole again. One evening, while locking up the office, Laura handed me a folder. "What's this?" "Letters," she said. "From people you've helped." Inside were dozens of notes, shaky handwriting, heartfelt words. One from a veteran who'd gotten his savings back. One from a widow who'd finally regained control of her property. They all said the same thing in different ways: "Thank you for believing me." I read them slowly, then looked up at her. "You did this," I said. "No," she replied. "We did." I smiled. She didn't need to say more. She was her mother's daughter, strong, steady, and unwilling to let darkness have the last word. Sometimes, at night, I still think about Derek. Not with hate, that burned out long ago, but with a kind of weary pity. A man who traded love for greed and ended up with nothing. If I've learned anything through all this, it's that justice isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or applause. It comes quietly, like dawn through an open window, steady, inevitable, and enough to see by. As for me, I spend my mornings at that same window, watching Charlie play beneath the maple tree. The same tree I planted the year Laura was born. Its roots run deep, unshaken by storms. And I think, that's what family is supposed to be. Not signatures on a page. Not contracts. Roots. Autumn has come again. The air carries that faint chill that smells of leaves and wood smoke, and the maple tree in my yard burns red and gold like a memory set aflame. From my porch, I can see Charlie pushing the swing, his small body rising and falling with that fierce joy only children know. Laura sits nearby, reading a stack of papers from Second Signature, the evening light soft on her face. It's strange, after everything, how peaceful life can feel. No courts. No lies. No signatures stolen or twisted into weapons. Just quiet, honest living. I've traded the noise of survival for the rhythm of peace. Some mornings, when I water the plants, I still catch myself checking the mailbox as if waiting for bad news. Habit, I guess. But what I find instead are letters from strangers who somehow heard my story and wanted to thank me. "You made me check my mom's paperwork. You made me ask questions. You helped us keep our home. I never set out to become anyone's example. I only wanted my life back." But maybe that's the point, that when we fight for what's right, even quietly, it gives others permission to do the same. Inside, above my desk, hangs a framed photo of Margaret. She's laughing in that way she used to, her head slightly tilted, eyes half closed. I talk to her sometimes. "You were right, you know," I tell her. "The world hasn't gotten meaner, just faster. People forget to look each other in the eye." She doesn't answer, of course, but the house feels less empty afterward. Charlie runs up the porch steps, cheeks flushed, hair wild. "Grandpa. Push me higher next time." I laugh. "That's how you break gravity, kiddo. One swing at a time." He grins and darts back into the yard, and I watch him until he disappears behind the tree. I think of the generations before me, my father, my grandfather, men who worked with their hands, who taught me that dignity isn't something you inherit, it's something you protect. I pick up my notebook and write down what I hope will outlive me. Freedom isn't given. It's guarded. And sometimes, the hardest fight is the quiet one, the one where you refuse to be silenced. The porch light flickers on, and Laura calls from the doorway, "Dinner's ready." I take one last look at the yard, the tree, the swing, the boy, and smile. "Coming," I say. Because this time, everything I love is right where it belongs. Freedom can't be bought, not with a signature, and not with a lie.